Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, welcome to this afternoon's webinar brought to you by the Association of Muslim Schools. Jazakallah khair for giving up your Friday afternoon, late afternoon. It's the last probably session of the day for those of you who are working today, I imagine. Looking forward to a nice break, the last weekend before school resumes, I imagine. So inshallah, this next hour will be very useful and very fruitful for the year ahead. As many of you will already know, this session is part of a wider piece of work that the Association of Muslim Schools has been working on over the past couple of weeks. Alhamdulillah, we just today managed to complete an 11-part, not an 8-part, but 11-part series on providing you a very comprehensive update on the changes to the Keeping Children Safe in Education documentation 2021. And it's been a difficult journey. Mashallah, Hasina and Khadijah have done a fantastic job. And they were the ones that actually suggested that after 6 hours of recording, and lots of preparation behind the scenes, they still insisted that they wanted to provide a Q&A for colleagues so that you could actually get some answers to questions or clarifications, or just make some general comments and seek some advice as and when you need it. Now, the session is planned for approximately an hour. Inshallah, we'll do a hard stop at 6 o'clock. We are recording the session, so we can then share with colleagues via our usual YouTube platforms. With regards to the actual Q&A for the next 55 minutes or so, if people would like to speak, please raise your hand through by clicking the raise hand feature beside your name. Or separately, if you would like, you can just insert your question into the chat, and inshallah, I'll be administering the chat in the background. So without further ado, I'm just going to do some brief introductions for Hasina and Khadijah. Mashallah, Hasina and Khadijah have both been around, involved in AMS for a number of years, some more than others, without naming names. Mashallah, Khadijah comes with a wealth of experience in relation to leading safeguarding practices in Islamic schools. I'd say up and down the country, not just in the Midlands, because mashallah, she has helped me down south, as with other schools. And alhamdulillah, an expert and a practitioner in what she does. And Hasina, for many of you, as you would know, she's currently an executive head of 3 schools. She's a school improvement partner for many of our Muslim schools, again, across the country. And they will, between the two of them, they will be taking your questions this afternoon. So what I would ask is that if anybody has any questions, like I said, raise your hand or do ask in the chat. Other than that, I'll just ask maybe Hasina if you want to come forward and just introduce the session, and maybe even just for a minute or so, just give an insight to the colleagues around what inspired you to want to actually put this 11-part series together in the first place. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay, assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself there, but it wasn't working. Yeah, as Brother has said, we like you received the Keeping Children Safe document when it was published, and myself and Khadijah read through all 160 odd pages of it, and we could see very early on that there are significant changes that have been included. But for me particularly, and for what we do at the Association of Muslim Schools, and it's a very important part of my life. Those of you that are on today and know me, it was what impact is this going to have on our schools, and the time frame that we had in which to understand those changes. Because first and foremost, brothers and sisters, when we receive guidance, revised guidance, new guidance, it's really about understanding what it is that it wants from me in my school setting, and what is it that I will have to do. And that takes time It takes time to process that information. It takes time to understand that information. You need to think about what's happening in your school already, and therefore what changes will need to be made, if any. And but my initial thoughts were, this is quite a lot, and I, as Brother Abdul has said, I've done a lot of work for schools across the country. I'm still doing that now, even though I have my own schools. And safeguarding is one area that we seem to trip on quite often, sadly. The picture is improving, but ever so slowly. And it's something that I know then creates a lot of difficulty for our schools. And so it was really important for us to share with you our thoughts on what those changes are, what they mean for our schools, and what we could do to support you to try and put those in place. And you know, alhamdulillah, we're so pleased that, you know, Allah has given us the strength to be able to do that. And you know, when I saw the message this afternoon on our chat group, that it was over 6 hours of filming or recording, it certainly, you know, was pleasing to know that we've given you as much as we could. And you would have noted, if you've managed to listen to most of them, that I kept saying to you, and this is something else for your action list, and this is something else that you need to do. If you're not already doing it, you know, if you're doing it, then that's fantastic. But there is so much that's new that really I want schools just to think and reflect. And tonight is really about telling us, you mentioned this, or I've read this, but we don't quite understand. What is it that we have to do? The other thing as well, brothers and sisters, is that we are very hopeful that we will share quite as soon as we can, because obviously our efforts have been with this first and foremost, that once we have completed our safeguarding policy, that we will share that with schools. Obviously, you need to look at your local authority and the template. Now, our local authority has yet to provide that template, and we are back in school on Wednesday. So, you know, it's really whether we receive it before that time. If not, we would have made as many changes as we think are needed, and we will make further amendments. But we need to give our schools access to our policy. And I think that, you know, that template from the local authority is one that you would look to. It's not one that you copy. And that's something I've mentioned, Khadijah's mentioned quite a number of times. This is where schools have faltered. And inspectors have picked that up to say, well, you've got missing content here. What is your school practice? And that actually has become very common, is what is your school procedure for preventing bullying in your school, for dealing with peer-on-peer reports, for dealing with sexual harassment and violence? What is it that you're going to do? What is it that teachers should be clear about? And that is not necessarily going to be in your template from the local authority. So we hope that, you know, you will find our policy useful. Inshallah, I think, you know, it's important that we can support you as you put that document together. I mean, our policy already is very, very lengthy, and it's going to become a much lengthier piece of documentation. So I think that, you know, if you've not started already, do try to, you know, get started. I think that is really important because, as I've mentioned, there's quite a number of other documents that you need to update, and you must update. The behaviour policy, for example, is a statutory requirement. It's an independent school standard, and they will expect to see those changes in that policy. So we really hope today that we can answer some of your questions, because we know, Khadijah and I know, how much there is to just take in from the guidance. So yeah, we're happy to, and if we're not able to answer all your questions today, then certainly we will get back to you as soon as we can. But hopefully, inshallah, we'll be able to get through quite a lot of them.
Hasina, whilst we're waiting for the colleagues to type in their questions or raise their hands, we have had a couple of questions come in through the email. Okay. One question we've had is, there's a lot of changes. There's 6 hours worth of changes. And some colleagues may be nervous about how much they can and can't do, considering that school opens in a few days' time. Yeah. Is there any bit of advice that you can offer with regards to what may need to be prioritized over other elements, considering all the changes that are required? Could you offer some advice?
Oh gosh, the answer is all of those changes have to be incorporated. I remember actually when the Keeping Children Safe first came out, and it came out with just 2 weeks to go. We've had a little bit more time this time. And a school that I know well was inspected within 2 weeks of the publication of that guidance, and they had not managed to incorporate all of the changes. And sadly, the school was graded a grade 4 judgment. And the head teacher, I remember, he came to one of our conferences and he said, Sister Hasina, how did they expect me to put all of this in place before the start of the new academic year? And this is what they certainly expect you to do. I've attended numerous Ofsted conferences, and that message comes over and over again. In fact, I remember in Birmingham one time I asked that question, and I said, how quickly do you expect schools to respond? And he said immediately, because it's about safeguarding children. And myself and Khadijah can also tell you, we had a material change inspection in one of our schools about 6 years ago, and Keeping Children Safe again had just been updated and published. And it was the August holidays, just like we are in now. And I asked for a material change. We were moving to a new site, and the inspector asked Khadijah, actually, I just sort of sat there next to her and smiled at the inspector. And he asked her about all the changes that were in that document. So he expected her to know it. And this was before the start of September. What I would say to you, what I would advise you to do is, and I do this with all areas that perhaps schools need to address, not just safeguarding, is to make a list, draw up a list. And I think throughout the videos, I was constantly saying, well, add this to your list and add this to your list. And then sort of look at all the things that need to be done. So I've mentioned to you, right, behaviour policy. Who would update the behaviour policy in your school? So who could we allocate that to? And it's about distributing the workload to other colleagues in the school. We're obviously going to help by giving you, inshallah, a copy of ours. The template, yes, Miriam, I did say that we will share our safeguarding policy when it's done, inshallah, with you. But also that you'll get the template from the local authority. So look at that as a starting point. But you've got to remember as well, colleagues, that they're not going to give you a template for recording low-level concern. They're not going to give you the procedures to follow in your school setting on how to manage a case that's reported to you on sexual harassment. How are you going to deal with that? They're not going to prepare for you staff guidance and pupil guidance. And so it's really about making that list, looking at who could pick some of that up. What's available out there? I mean, if you were to ask your local authority, could you advise us on a low-level concern policy, perhaps? Or if there's one in that other schools use, we will get around to sharing some of these documents with you. because that's going to be part of the safeguarding hub. But it's not going to be immediate. So I think certainly make that list. Look at what you're already doing, because you can tick that off. What you need to update. So if you need to add a paragraph in the behaviour policy, just think about what you need to add in and who could put that in. But as long as it's there, and as long as you can demonstrate that you have taken things from the guidance and you have incorporated it and you have shared it, then certainly I would advise you that you do it in that way. But I think that yeah, there is a lot. I totally agree with you, and that's, again, I'm going to say to you again, this is the reason why we've done these videos for you, because we just saw the numerous number of changes and therefore the actions that were needed. And some of those I've just listed just now. But you know, if you get stuck, if you're not sure, then we've got our our email address. Whilst you're working on things, just drop us an email, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll be able to help. And Khadijah, I don't know if you think there's anything in particular that you think really, I mean, everything has to be incorporated into new documentation, but is there anything for you that absolutely sits at the top of that list?
No, I totally agree. I think everything is just as important as the other. But what you said is right, just make a list of things. I mean, I've sat and I've just made a list of everything, because it's quite scattered in the document, what needs to go in the child protection policy. So I've just made a list of everything that needs to go. And as I'm incorporating it in the policy, I'm ticking it off, so I know I've covered it. So, I mean, that's an idea as well. But yeah, I think you've covered everything that needed to be said.
Okay, another question for you guys. 11 videos, 6 hours of content to go through. How would you suggest that colleagues distribute the material? Is the material appropriate for all staff, or is it just for school leaders? Is it something that can be played back during the September inset days? How would you advise that colleagues best use the material that we provided?
Right, so I think if you look at, let's have a look at it. If you look at the contents page, we've got part 1 to part 5. Part 1, as you all know, must be shared with all staff. It's a lot for staff to listen to. So you may wish to take bits from it and share and play the video, play the recording if you wish, or you may want to make it staff friendly. I was going to say child friendly, but so that your staff understand it. You will know your staff. You will know. I know, for example, that my staff particularly are very well versed in safeguarding, and so if I pitch it quite high, they're going to be able to follow. Think about the staff that are coming to you. Are they new to a school environment? Maybe they've never heard of keeping children safe before, and so I think that it's important that you just pitch it. And the reason I'm saying this to you is because when I question staff in schools about safeguarding, and I might have last year there were quite a number of changes, and I delivered to quite a number of schools, and some head teachers said to me, "Oh, there's not that many changes," and I said, "No, you're wrong." Because when they talked about mental health and well-being, that and its implications upon curriculum, upon your practice, upon the information that you're going to share with pupils on all sorts of aspects, means that all sorts of actions have to be taken. And so I could tell from questioning some of the staff that what had been delivered to them was not clear. And it wasn't made understandable for them. So, you can play our recordings, no problem. But just please be aware that at the end of that session, the staff need to have understood. And if you were to question them on any aspect of part 1, would they be able to tell you? Because I'll give you an example of a school that had a monitoring inspection. So this was one of my schools that had inadequate judgment. and I'd done some work with them, and they were due a monitoring inspection. As most of you will know, if a school doesn't meet the independent school standards, that's followed up with a monitoring inspection. And the inspector turned up at this school, and she was, the head teacher hadn't arrived. And so the admin team got her to sign in and all of that sort of thing, and said, you know, if you'd just like to take a seat, the head teacher's on her way. And the lead inspector said to the admin staff, or one member of the admin staff, she goes, whilst I'm waiting, can I please ask you? And then she asked her a few questions about keeping children safe while she's in the reception. And alhamdulillah, the administrator, she's senior admin actually in that particular school, she was a deputy DSL. So she answered the questions and she said, just to let you know, she goes, I'm the deputy DSL in the school. But this was in the reception that those questions were asked. I have another school where the changes had come in, and the lead inspector asked the head, could you just share with me some of the changes that have come in keeping children safe? And the head replied, I will need to check. That was it. That was, the school had failed the inspection. He didn't need to say anything more. Now the inspector tried to probe it because the head gave him this feedback. He said, no, he goes, you don't need to do that. He goes, just tell me, what would you tell me? Is it a prominent change? And he wasn't able to do so. Now this was the head. So you have to not only share that information, but check they've understood. Question them. I mean, one of the things that I'll advise you to do is often in staff meetings, staff would think they would come into a staff meeting as they would do weekly. And I would say to the staff, there's no agenda today. I'm asking you about safeguarding. It wouldn't be Khadijah that would be asking, I would do the questioning. Because I needed to know that my staff knew. And it was just as you would do in a class, it was random questioning. So it would be like, right, Khadijah, can you tell me what? And they weren't allowed to talk to each other, and Khadijah would be able to vouch for this. So make this part of your safeguarding culture, that you are constantly checking, but certainly check on this, on the changes and their understanding of the changes. And the reason that I'm saying that, I'm not sure how many of you that have joined us today are due an inspection, but at AMS we've looked at our database, and 80 of our member schools are due an inspection this first term. So it's really important that you deliver so that they understand. Deliver it in bits if you have to. Deliver it to different audiences and pitch it at different levels. If you think, well, if I deliver it to everybody, they're not going to get it all, if I pitch it at this level. And also check that they've understood. So have a meeting with your lunchtime staff and say, what would you do if you were to overhear a conversation? Remember, we talked about this in one of the videos, and a pupil was sharing with another pupil. What would you do? Who would you speak to? And so it's important that you have that checking process in place. Part 2 is the management of safeguarding. So if we want to share the videos, part 2 should go to your head teachers, deputy heads, assistant heads, your governors, trustees, and proprietors. Now, I've come across quite a lot of governors in my time, and are they going to sit and listen to a recording of a video? That's one for you to answer. But I certainly would say that if you're able to hold a separate session with them and just give them that part. And so, yes, brother, there is, but the changes that are outlined are so minimal that I don't think it does it justice. I mean, we can put some stuff on the Safeguarding Hub of the changes that, because if you look at the appendix with the changes in this document, does it do all that I've said? It doesn't. Or myself and Khadijah have shared with you in the videos. It doesn't talk about having a low-level concern policy. It doesn't talk about adding to your staff handbook about the code of conduct expected of staff. It doesn't say that. So it's because it's the implications of that change is why we've done these videos and what it is that you have to do. So we've updated our staff handbook. We've updated, we've written a policy on certain things. Khadijah's hard at work doing other documents at the moment. So it's, you know, it's important that you're looking at what you've got. I think I said this in one of the videos. You might already have all of this. You might have already included in your behaviour policy how you are going to prevent bullying in your school, in which case you don't need to add it in. But if you hadn't added it in, now you must add it in. And that's the change. And that's, you know, I find that, you know, when we look at these documents that come with you and give you revisions, I mean, I've got a safeguarding network document here in front of me. It doesn't really do much to give me everything that I need to know. And we actually joined a webinar on this, and you know, I didn't feel that it would give our schools the information that they needed of what actions to actually take. So that's why you know, we did the sessions. So part 2, management of safeguarding. Part 2, safer recruitment. So those involved in safer recruitment need to have that one. So that doesn't need to go to everyone. Part 4, allegations against staff. Now, when you share your safeguarding policy, you will have a section on allegations, and it's quite easy to share because this is not new. But section 2, concerns that do not meet the harms threshold, that has to be shared with everyone, because that's something that everybody will take part in, and that's about your code of conduct and so on. So certainly add that to your list of what everyone must know. And part 5, everyone must know, because as Khadijah and I discussed with you yesterday, we have a separate publication. And actually we went through both documents, I've got it here with me, both the Keeping Children Safe and the separate published document on sexual harassment and violence. And actually what's in the Keeping Children Safe perhaps isn't in greater depth as it is in the separate publication. That's why you know, and I think when I gave Khadijah my copy, it was filled with highlighted bits and have we got this and have we done this and what's happening about what we're doing about this in our school. So just sort of lots of questions to her about across our school setting, what is it that we're doing. So that one is a separate one. Now, when the DSL forum sessions take place, in areas like this, we will repeat. So if you think you haven't got time, then just sort of, you know, share it. But if you haven't got time to do it in depth, then we will be holding some sessions. I've asked Khadijah to do some of the key areas. So peer-on-peer abuse, on sexual harassment, online safety. Those are the areas that we're going to prioritise in the forums. I think we can have a discussion as well at AMS about perhaps doing a few close ones together and then sort of going half-termly because of these changes. But I think that sort of would be your audience. I mean, in terms of proprietors and governors, they are supposed to read the whole document. So again, head teachers, you may wish to hold a separate session if you, with your board and record it. You know, we've talked all the time about recording. And you know, we've said it so many times because myself and Khadijah have dealt with so many schools where the school has not met standards because of poor practice in recording. And actually Khadijah's gone in and delivered training, and we've gone back to check that now folders are telling the story of what the practice is in the school. School inspectors will often say that there's not enough detail. And it's not being, you know, it's not coherent enough. And because you're missing information, how are you giving that child the best support that you can give? It's like I mentioned yesterday, yes, you might be doing something, but are you doing enough? So I think that, you know, again, it's really important that part of your actions, and this wouldn't be an immediate priority, but certainly be a priority, that you build it into your calendar of monitoring the quality of recording. And we've talked so many times about evaluation. At the end of a case, senior colleagues should sit around the table and say, right, what did we do? Did we do it well? What do we need to do next? Do we need to change our practice in school? What if we're teaching already about online safety? Why are there so many issues? And sit down and look at that curriculum. Look, get the IT teacher or whoever it is to show you what they're teaching and look at whether you think there are gaps. And often, as head teachers, we don't have enough time to do that. We don't look at exactly what it is that we're covering. So really take some time to look at that and record it and demonstrate to inspectors that, yes, you know what, we are good at what we do. We have a case, we deal with it according to our policy. We keep good, concise records of what's happened, and we learn lessons from it. And here is an example of what we did as a result of those changes. So I think it's recording is really important. And one of the things that I've said throughout is when you are sharing training, when you're doing the training with your staff, if there's a priority, going back to that question, recording. And recording quickly and getting that information through to whoever needs to receive it. And I want, that's part of your responsibility. And I would say to staff in that way, this is your responsibility. If you come across an issue that's worrying you, you need to immediately, the word is immediately, alert it to this person's attention, and then it needs to be followed up with a written report. And this is what we expect. And this is where you can find the template. So really press on the reporting, because again, that's been really strengthened in this document. So look at your current practice as well. I've said that look at what you're already doing. Is it okay? That's great. If it's not okay, what more do you need to add now to meet the changes? So yeah.
Jazakallah khair, Hasina, for that very comprehensive answer. Brothers and sisters, I really encourage you to ask any questions, share with other colleagues where you are on this journey, make some suggestions. Inshallah, we're all in it together. I've got a question. I'll bring in Khadijah at this stage. Earlier this year, Khadijah, the government commissioned Ofsted to undertake a rapid review of sexual abuse in schools and colleges. Now, the recommendations from Ofsted's findings, have they been incorporated into this issue of keeping children safe in education?
Yeah, most of the changes in keeping children safe in education is a result of that review.
Okay.
I think there's a pattern here now. I mean, we have a new inspection framework. That's because of research. So we're starting to see a pattern, aren't we, colleagues, that, Ofsted are saying, well, we know this is true because we've asked. It's not just us making things up. And the research that they did was so extensive for the inspection framework that it really fed into all the changes that came about in the draft. And then obviously when the final document came out, they'd strengthened that even further. And those of you that came to conferences that AMS did would have heard and seen. So again, that document has had massive impact on the changes in this document. So, what they would argue is that you are ignoring what young people are telling you. And if young people are telling you our voices are not heard, we are made to feel like a burden when we share, then you've got to change that. And that's why we put it in this document. So what have you done as a school to change it? So it's, yeah.
Again, if there are any further questions, please do share.
Or even if you've got any suggestions, I think even if, staff have, colleagues have got any suggestions about how to make this path easy. I mean, I'd be quite interested to know what schools have done so far. I mean, has anybody completed their safeguarding policy or not yet?
I think people have been eagerly anticipating this. Zubaida's got her hand up, so I'm going to unmute you, Zubaida. Just bear with me. There you go.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to say, going back onto the review where sexual harassment in schools and all the voices that were heard, I think if we take that down to a primary level, one of the key things with children is it's about sorting out those low-level problems that they have, because with all this, healthy minds and whatever, some children are prone to being quite negative and quite down on themselves. But if you've got a record showing actions that you've taken, and it doesn't have to be lengthy, what we do is we just literally have a concern sheet that teachers tick, but the key part of that we put forward to teachers is the action part in that whole process. So then you actually start to see, like you said, a story and a picture build up, because then when you do get to a point where perhaps things have perhaps brimmed over a little bit, or parents have come and said, well, my child's been bullied, you can go back to it and you can kind of trace back the whole picture and what you've done as a school, because often that not parents say, well, you've done nothing. And I think this is what's happened with this review. Children have gone, or youngsters have gone to teachers over periodic points of view. It may have been dealt with in different ways, but as a holistic approach, it wasn't dealt with effectively. And I think even at primary level, our schools have to recognise that it doesn't have to be a sexual harassment claim. It could just be bullying, or a child's, if you have got an anxious child, what are you doing to deal with that child's ability to understand the difference between bullying and not bullying? So it's all that kind of thing that we need to be very, very mindful of, I think.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned as well that sometimes schools are asked questions about whether children are asked questions about whether they would feel safe in school to report bullying, and some children might say, well, not sure, and that not sure part means that children are not confident. But schools would argue, well, we've done everything. We've had an anti-bullying day, we've done an assembly on it, we mention it in our Quran lessons about the way we should treat each other. What more can we do? And actually schools sometimes miss the point that really is about instilling that confidence in children to be able to share concerns and worries. And that, of course, has come throughout the document. So again, checking that, yes, okay, well, we're doing anti-bullying days, or we're doing peer-on-peer abuse days, or whatever it is, and why that's not acceptable, but actually, is it effective? Is it working? So although you may look at this document and say, right, okay, I need to do this and this and this, okay, so I've done it now, let's tick it off. Actually, how good is it? And we've seen, in our travels, lots of fantastic documents in schools, but they're just not implemented. So again, it's really important that whatever you put on paper, that you are confident that anyone coming into your school will be able to say, yes, we can see this in practice, it's there. So that's sort of the other thing. But I mean, in terms of one of the pieces of advice I'd give to you all is that just plan your staff training day really carefully, because once school's sort of underway and there's just so much more going on, it's just trying to fit it all in. We visited a school over this summer, and the school had only allowed 2 hours, because I asked the question, obviously having read the document, and I said to the brother, I said, that's not going to be enough, because you have to deliver level 1 safeguarding to your staff, and you have to make them aware of the new changes to part 1, and you have to share your revised safeguarding policy. So how is all that going to be possible effectively in 2 hours? So if you've not thought about it already, then colleagues, certainly I would say to you, just look at that staff training day. Is there anything that you can move perhaps to later on in the term, and really prioritize this, because the 3 key areas for the schools that are awaiting inspection will be the new inspection framework, which should be fully embedded. We've had the trial period and all of that, and really now it should be certainly well in place. And obviously the changes to keeping children safe, but we also have RSE, and that's also been at the forefront of many inspections that have happened during the summer term of this academic year, or this last academic year. So these are the sort of the 3 key areas that schools that are expecting an inspection to be absolutely confident in that they will be able to deliver. And of course, inspectors will be trained. They'll know what to look for. And if you've got a website, Again, we've looked at a number of websites where the policy is not up to date. It's a failure before they've even stepped into your school. So, just make sure that once you begin school, the most updated safeguarding policy is downloadable. That's the only one. Actually, schools get quite confused in what needs to be on the school's website. The only policy that needs to be downloadable is child protection and safeguarding policy. All other policies that you may reference to do not need to be downloadable, but parents need to be aware that they are available for them should they wish to review them. So that's just something to bear in mind. But there have been times when we've looked at websites and either the policy is not downloadable or it's not been updated. So it's been updated in school, but it hasn't been updated on the website. And actually that's part of provision of information. So just make sure that you get that done as well when you start school. We know from, previous experience that in order to sort of determine whether school should be a priority on the inspection list is to review school websites. And if I've got up-to-date information, then I can be confident that the school is really doing what it needs to be doing. And if I come across information that's out of date, then that would send alarms. And so, you climb higher up the priority list. Because if the safeguarding policy is not up to date on your website, does that mean that safeguarding practices are not up to date in your school setting? And so is there then a question if children are safe? And so it's really important that whoever that deals with your website is aware of that and is promptly doing what they need to do. And the other thing that I would say to you is that keeping children safe isn't just about what we've read about and the changes. It's about the health and safety on school premises. And so, head teachers and DSLs, and if there are any governors, trustees listening to us today, we go into far too many schools where health and safety standards are not met. So it's really important, because although you might do all of this work, if premises and accommodation and other aspects of health and safety are not met, then safeguarding is unmet, and standards 7A and 7B are unmet. So it's important that that areas are being focused on. I think what we've noticed as well is because of subhanAllah, the COVID and the disruption it's caused, and if you're a secondary school, you will know how hard the summer term has been, and preparing pupils for the assessments and the submission of grades and the moderation and all of that. And when we have all of this to contend with, then we take the eye off the ball, and sometimes things can deteriorate. And so it's really important that again, you take some time to look at these things before school reopens, so that inshallah those of you that do receive an inspection, you're really ready for them and able to say, yeah, we're doing well, come and see our work.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan, Hasina. Just conscious of time, we've got another 15-14 minutes or so to go. So again, if anybody has any questions, comments, please come forward. I've got another question that's come via the email. A lot of our institutions are housed in multi-occupancy buildings. So we would have a school during the day, we'd have a maktab maybe in the evening, and in the weekends we might use it as a community centre. Now, we've noted that schools that are set up in such ways and now need to be mindful of other residents within that building and the child protection safeguarding procedures that they have. Now, what is expected of a school? So say, for example, there is a maktab running in the afternoon, in the evening. What is the school required to hold on that maktab to satisfy the inspectorate?
Before I answer that question, can I just ask colleagues to put it in the chat? If your school hires out your building to individuals, or your facilities premises to individuals or other organisations, or you have a maktab madrasa that runs in the evening. Could you just put it on the chat? I'd be quite interested to know how many schools that are that are on today have actually got people using their facilities, or you're using them for other purposes. Just the one so far. Yeah. Otherwise.
3 so far, 4.
So 3 or 4. Yeah, I mean, whilst we're sort of still getting people to put that on the chat, I mean, even in our school, actually, so, we could add that on. Brothers and sisters, it's paragraph 155, 156, where governing bodies hire or rent out school facilities or premises to organizations or individuals, they should ensure that appropriate arrangements are in place to keep children safe. So that's a requirement now. That you've got to make sure, remember what we said about the must and the shoulds, that there should be a reasonable reason why you've not done that. When services or activities are provided by the governing body of proprietors, so in many of our cases, in my school, my proprietor runs a maktab, and it's under the direct supervision of their school. Their arrangements for child protection will apply. Okay, so that's really clear. The governing body or proprietor should therefore seek assurance that the body concerned, so this is where someone else is using the premises, that the body has appropriate safeguarding and child protection policies and procedures in place. So you've got to make sure that that's happening, and you've got to keep a record that that's happening, and to ensure that from time to time you inspect those arrangements. So this is very different to what we've seen before, and so it's really about making sure. So when we are delivering our safeguarding, we have maktab teachers going to join, because well, it's there. And so, again, having them have training and all of that should continue. And they've also put a safeguarding policy together. I know there's been lots of discussions about what regulations are going to come into force for supplementary classes, but this is the beginning. And the fact that it's there in keeping children safe for the very first time means that, we are now beginning to see those discussions take hold. So again, this is something definitely to discuss with your proprietors and governors. Okay, well, what is it that we're going to do? How are we going to demonstrate that children are safe on our school premises whenever our premises are being used? So a really important one, because even if you were not to show it, if you weren't to share that with inspectors, or they weren't to ask you, but often inspectors are on site, aren't they, until late into the evening, and they may come across children coming into the school. In fact, actually, I was in a school recently, and it was a weekday, and the school had not put the heating on. Now, those of you that know me will know that I need to have lots of heating. I'm really not very good in the cold. And when I walked into this building, it was quite cool. And I said to the head, and there was a team of senior leaders there, I said, I'll need a heater. I said, I'll need to keep myself warm, otherwise I won't be able to function. And they said, oh, we'll have to wait for the administrator to come, because he'll need to put the heating on. And that might be a few hours. And I went, oh, a few hours. And I said, well, could you see if you've got a heater in the school? This is a real story. So they went to find one and came back with one, and that was great. And then we started to do review of some of the documents, and then I could hear recitation of Quran. And then I asked a question. I said, do you have a class that's running? And they said, yes, we do. And I said, without heating? We've got children here in a cold building for a number of hours without heating. And what are they learning? They're learning Quran. So, you know, I think it's, subhanAllah, so important now that, you know, we are aware of who's using our organizations and what is it that you know, they, and I think also to be very aware that if an allegation, okay, so we're part 4 now, if an allegation is made against a madrasa teacher, maktab teacher, you need to be able to answer those questions because it says so here. But also inspectors may see practice and ask, okay, well, let's, now that we've seen it, let's have a look and let's see what's happening. So it's sort of important that you have that conversation. This is a very serious conversation, by the way. You have, you know, we talked about, you know, the email that we had earlier about what should we prioritize. Absolutely prioritize this. And make sure that you are clear about what's happening when your organization is being let out, or if you're doing things yourselves, because children can raise concerns. And actually, I dealt with a school recently where an allegation was made against a member of staff, and obviously the query came to myself. You know, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you've done all that you needed to do. And if children were to argue that, you know, we sit in freezing cold conditions, well, then is that not a safeguarding issue? So just be sort of very aware of that.
Jazakallah khair, Hasina. So brothers and sisters, as we're getting closer to 6 o'clock, I've just posted a message. If anybody's got any last minute questions or comments, please do come forward with them. Alhamdulillah, it's been a very quick 55 minutes or so. I'm sure people have probably got questions and they're probably pulling their hair out, or they're thinking, wow, how am I going to get through all of this? And yeah, I feel the same way, but inshallah, we're here together as a team. We've started on this journey by compiling these videos, putting on this Q&A, and inshallah, as a team, we will move forward. So if there's no further questions, if Khadijah, you wouldn't mind going to the last slide. Hasina, one question that's just come on. What's the paragraph number and page number for the maktab?
Page 39, page 155, sorry, paragraph 155 and 156. Use of school premises for non-school activities. Page 39, paragraph 155, 156. And I think there's some more questions, I think, coming up on the chat.
So the one brother Abu Bakr has just mentioned that he's updated his safeguarding policy with the changes, and he's happy to share that. So brother, if you wouldn't mind emailing that over to us, safeguarding@ams-uk.org, that'd be much appreciated.
Yeah, that'd be great. And actually, we will share ours, and any other documents that we think that you will find helpful will be on the Safeguarding Hub, and we'll try and put that date together quite soon for the first of the sessions. But please let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see, or anything that you'd like to have help with. I think if that's Mariam from Lotri, then I know I've got to get back to you on some training. But really, please do let us know on what it is that you'd like to see happen in those sessions, because that's what this is here for. And we're so glad that we're putting a Safeguarding Hub together at AMS. It's the first time we're doing this. So yeah, it should be good, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Hasina, Jazakallah khair to Khadijah. MashaAllah, it's, like I said at the beginning, 6 hours of content probably doesn't justify the hard work that's gone on behind the scenes. Just so everybody's aware, alhamdulillah, we have set up this Safeguarding Hub. We haven't really promoted it or shared too much into what exactly this hub is about, but watch this space. We will be sharing some more information in and around it over the coming weeks. In the meantime, if you have any safeguarding related questions, you can email us safeguarding@ams-uk.org.
Yeah,
and inshallah, we will try and get back to you as soon as we can. And also there is a web page /safeguarding usual AMS website. But from us, thanks again for giving up your afternoon. We will upload this video onto YouTube, so do share with colleagues. And so from here, we'll bring the session to a close. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جزاك الله everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.